Jamie, do you decide to compete in the competition and potentially win the Zamboni, or do you respectfully pass?
I would do it.
Well, I'm glad you say that because you actually perfectly segued into the spelling bee.
No.
Hello, world. I start these
Hi.
often by saying hello, world, Jamie. Do you have a signature? Hey, it's working. Do you have a signature little catchphrase you say, or you just go,
Ooh.
hello, this is the episode?
Yeah, I feel like I admire when someone commits to an intro line. I feel like YouTubers are really good at it.
Yeah. But I think YouTubers are a little branding obsessed, but probably to their benefit. I don't know. I feel like I often just stumble into the beginning of podcasts or anything, basically. I'm always impressed by someone who has like a smooth, and with that, we're going to the break. It's like, wow, how'd you do that?
And you're like, I guess you can just do that. Yeah, you don't have to like scream something, but it's tempting to just want to scream something.
Yeah.
I like Hello World. I feel like that works here. It could work. That works for anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a bad place to start. It reminds me of, do you remember that cartoon Little Bill? It was Little Bill Cosby.
That was wild. Did he?
In retrospect, a horrible idea. But my little brother loved Little Bill, and he always said "Hello, friend," which again, in retrospect, is so weird.
Yeah. Man, do I take hello friend and say, well, Little Bill's not using it anymore?
We're taking it back. I thought about that with like anyone who would make, I'm trying, maybe is there an example to the contrary? Anyone who would like make a show like that, they're like, I need to make a show about me as a 6-year-old, probably has something to hide.
Yeah.
Like Young Rock, right?
Yes.
That was a show.
Great example.
Everybody Hates Chris.
Yeah.
Although I don't even, like there's just a lot of examples of
even
that.
Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. I didn't need his prequel.
You didn't need his origin story?
Is there anyone whose origin story I feel like we missed out on? I don't think so.
No, because now everyone gets one.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It's not as special.
You're just like, I don't care what happened. Like, I don't care.
I should introduce you. My guest today is Emmy-nominated writer, podcast legend, comedian, author of the book Raw Dog. She just recorded her special. Let's see if I can get off the top of my head. This Tiny Man Will Kill Me.
Really close. Yeah, let's go with it.
What did I get off?
I get it wrong sometimes. The tiny man is trying to kill me.
Is trying to kill me.
Yeah.
That's better. That's better than he did kill me.
It's over.
I have Jamie Loftus as my special guest today. Jamie, I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so excited.
I was going back and forth on a few ways to describe you, and I'm going to defend what I'm going to say, which would sound, I think, condescending, but you have to hear me out.
Okay. I hope it's also really mean.
Yeah, it's really mean.
Okay.
Just not good. No.
Yeah. What can I say? It's not for me, but people seem to like it. Let's get her in here.
I view you as, and I hate when people say this, but here's how I'll defend it. I view you as the podcaster's podcaster. And I hate when people say the comedian's comedian or whatever. Because my first thought with that is like, it means they're not really famous. But here's what I think about you, because you are extremely successful comedian, podcaster and comedian and everything. But why I call you the podcaster's podcaster is, and you don't know this, but as someone who has worked in podcasting for the last 10 years, whenever there is like a brainstorm pitch session happening with a network, with host, with any department in podcasting, it has truly become a game to me where I say, how long until they bring up Jamie Loftus? Because whenever they're talking about something creative or interesting or different, eventually, and I'm guilty of this too, eventually someone goes, well, you know who's really good at that is Jamie Loftus. So that's kind of how I view you as
Wow,
Podcasters
I'm up on the
Podcaster.
blue sky board. That's thrilling.
You're on many dry erase boards of goals for podcasters and networks and stuff. So how do you
That
feel? Do you
is
like that, or should I have just stuck with the multi-hyphenate?
I have so many questions, but I mean, that is
Yeah,
nice. That is, I think, like, ultimately a good thing, probably.
I
It's
think
so
so.
funny because it's like no one talks to me, but it's
Yes,
nice to know that I'm on their mind.
you definitely are on their mind.
Yeah.
And yes, we've been in meetings together where um, you've told me really creative, fun podcast pitches, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. We should make this. And then a network will just say, we don't do limited series, and
Right.
that is really frustrating to me. I want to talk to you a lot today about limited series because I'm a
Yes.
big fan of them, and I think they're like super underused and undervalued. And
Mhm.
I truly view you as like one of the very few people who makes killer limited series. And whenever a network or anyone is like pushing back on like, we don't do limited series, I'm like, well, look at all of the amazing pods Jamie has done. And then,
I mean, I love limited series so much. I'm really bummed that I'm excited to talk about it. Yeah, because I'm bummed that it's like such an uphill battle to get any of them made now.
yeah, it's weird because I almost feel like you can't use, not to get into like advertiser weeds, but I don't
Mhm.
think you can use the same excuses if you're a network of like, oh, well, we prefer weekly and this and that and stuff. But ads can now be like dynamically inserted. So even if you only
Right.
do a 6 episode thing, and if it's really good and people listen to it for like years and years, from like a monetary standpoint, the network could still make money on it. And so like back in like 6 years ago, people would be like, well, I can't sell 6 ads and that's it. It needs to be like 52. But now it's like, hey, new ads can run all the time. So
An infinity. Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. Yeah, and it's like that will make a network more money anyways than like a show that goes on forever and is just okay.
yeah,
Although maybe that's not true. A lot of shows that are just okay have been on for so long. I don't know. I don't
yes.
know.
No, I posted a clip literally today of uh, Rochelle Chen, who's a great podcast producer, saying like, "Do you
Mhm.
ever fear a podcast going on forever?" And I told her this quote from Hayes, which is, "One of my greatest
Ooh.
fears is that Hollywood Handbook ends. The only greater fear is that it never stops." Um, and I don't know. I think that's relatable. Of just
Yes.
the will I be doing this 10, 20, 30 years from now? Just this same podcast over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm excited to chat with you about all of that. I wrote down, let me pull it up. A more professional host would have already had this.
Great.
Right. It is right here. And it's not impressive. It's really just like a Wikipedia thing. Not impressive that I pulled it up, but this is impressive to me, which is you started Bechdel Cast with Caitlin Durante in 2016. Then you
Yes.
do My Year in Mensa in 2020. You do
Mhm.
Lolita in 2020. You do ACTCast in 2021. You do Ghost Church in 2022. And you write the book Raw Dog that comes out in 2023. And then
Mm.
you do 16th Minute of Fame, which is out right now in 2024.
Yeah.
My first question is, Jamie, how do you do it?
It's too many. I don't know. It's too many.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy everyone I work with. I feel like the best thing I have going for me is that I'm like given a lot of creative freedom. Once the concept is approved, I feel like I'm like able to kind of do what I need to do, and I work with like a really small team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
Do you,
And there was a show I was working on, limited for 2023 that just didn't end up for all these different like legal reasons didn't end up happening. But I did this whole
Interesting.
like reporting trip to Alaska in late 2022 that it will forever be mysterious.
Wow. Can you say
Yeah.
vaguely what it was about, or can you not?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it was about like a sort of COVID era, huge small political story that happened in the like Anchorage area.
Mhm.
So I was there talking to people and investigating that. So I went to I went to Alaska in December, so it did feel like work. It
Wow.
wasn't a vacation.
Sure.
But
Uh,
yeah.
that's tough. My how I can relate to that is I was invited to go to a Hollywood Handbook fans wedding in Alaska 7 years ago, and
Whoa.
I said
Okay.
yes. And I
Mhm.
don't think they thought I was going to say yes. I was
Mhm.
very early in my relationship with my now wife, and I said, "Hey, I have a crazy, opportunity." I didn't say opportunity. I said, "I got this crazy DM to go to a wedding in Alaska in 2 months. You want to
You
go?"
got a +1?
Everything. I said, "Do you want
That's
to go to this
awesome.
wedding with me?" It's the travel's paid for. I think we'd have to pay for like the hotel or something, but some of it's paid for. Just a fan
Mhm.
that was like, "Would be crazy to have you here, LOL." And I said, she was like, "Haha, let's do it." And then I responded, "Hey,
Wow.
thanks for the offer. We're in." And I never heard from that person again.
No, that's so scary.
They fully backed out, and honestly, probably for the best. It was would have been an insane thing to do.
Did did Hayes and Sean also get invited, or was it just you?
I'd like to think it was just me.
I really want it to be just you. That would be
A
that would
hundred
be
percent me too.
having to work remotely from Alaska because you're at a Hollywood Handbook fans
Fans
wedding.
wedding, who I've
Yeah.
never met before.
Oh, I'm upset with them. Like, do it or don't. Don't do it
Yeah,
for a bit.
the follow through
Yeah.
would have been great. So if that
Mhm.
person's watching now, maybe invite me to your anniversary, your 10th anniversary.
That'd be nice.
And then maybe I won't respond and they can see how it feels.
Ooh.
So you started, was Bechdel Cast your first experience with podcasting? Were you guesting on other shows in
I
2016 era? Like, how did you get into podcasting?
I'm sure I did do guest stuff. I have a very strong memory of the first podcast I did, which is like while I was still staying in Boston. I wonder if there's any trace of it that exists anymore, but I remember taking it very seriously. It was called the Improv Saved My Life
Great.
podcast. And I've been
How
doing
did that
improv
go?
for like 6 months, and it like very much it had made my quality of life worse.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
and,
It was kind of
and
a vision board of like, maybe it will save my life.
it was very earnest, and I forget who ran it, but the guy was very sweet. But all of the questions were like, "How has improv changed your life for the better?" And I don't think I did very well because I was like 21. I was like, "Well, I don't know."
Yeah.
But
Not
yeah,
yet.
I remember it being like, "Wow, podcasts are where you go to like a guy's apartment and he asks about the worst thing that's ever happened to you."
Uh-huh.
And I think that that is still the premise of a lot of them.
Yes, I would unfortunately agree. A lot of them is just like, especially now with social media, I almost think it's like encouraged that too, of like, if
Mhm.
you could share something fucked up, like this will go viral, which will be huge for us. And it's a lot of, unfortunately, reverse engineering like clicks. And then I think it's just
Yeah.
people, like a lot of hosts trying to not a lot, but definitely enough that it's a little disappointing to see sometimes on like Instagram or TikTok. Like, oh, okay, was part of why you had this person here was just so they would say this story.
Right, so
So
they would say something fucked up,
yeah,
for $0.
yes,
But that was I mean, that's a lot of my, like, especially and after I moved here, I think I did, like, a few podcasts of that nature, but,
hmm
yeah, no, the Bechdel cast, that was, my co-host, like, brought that idea to me, and we started that in, yeah, late 2016. At the time, they worked at, Meltdown, so they had
cool.
access to a podcast studio that we
Mhm.
could, like, use. So it's just sort of like, we'll try it for, like, 3 months, and
You,
if
Caitlin, Chris Hardwick, Tom Cruise, all in the same
all the
circle.
greats,
Yep.
there's so we
Making
were just
podcast magic.
really good. Yeah, I was like, I feel like we actually got, like, bigger guests at the very beginning of this show.
Oh, really?
Because we were just there a lot, but yeah, so yeah, we were there and like just like losing money on it for the first year, but it was really
Sure.
fun and enough people were listening to it and we were having enough fun that we wanted to keep going.
And you weren't with Nerdist at the time, right? It was just were you independent and recording there, or were you
Yeah.
like a Nerdist podcast?
No, we were I don't even remember. I'm assuming Caitlin tried, but if so, they had no
Sure.
interest.
It was too
Yeah.
small. But then,
Yeah.
so over that year, you're recording there. The show is slowly growing and growing. And then is it like around a year? Then do you pitch it to iHeart? Like, what's that process look like for
No,
both of you?
I guess it was closer to 2 years
Yeah.
before we were officially on a network. But if I'm remembering right, the I started guesting on Cracked podcasts
Yep.
at the time.
Mhm.
And then the guy in charge of Cracked went to How Stuff Works, Jack
Mhm.
O'Brien, and I started guesting on his shows there. And after like a year of I was guesting on stuff, then Caitlin started guesting on stuff, and we had enough listeners after like a year and a half, 2 years that they were willing to. They asked if they could take on the show
Cool.
at a killer rate for them.
Yes.
So
Yep.
we were like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, sure, network, awesome, free seltzer, and so yeah,
Yep.
that was how
This
we
is a
got
great
that.
deal. Parentheses for us.
for them, yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, it was so that was I think like 2018, and then shortly, like I felt like almost immediately that network was eaten by iHeart, and we've been at iHeart ever since. But yeah, we technically signed on with How Stuff Works, and then it was just acquired
Interesting.
by
Yeah.
iHeart shortly after.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. And then
Yeah.
when you record pre-COVID, that 2018, 2019, are you typically going to iHeart for those recordings? Where are you guys recording typically?
Yeah, we were recording on site. I miss it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't even know if we could do that now if we wanted to. But yeah, pre-COVID, we were always recording in studio.
Uh-huh.
And there was like a really, I thought, like fun office culture there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was where we were for the most part. And then I pitched my year in Mensa. I think I contractually had to because I started working on it like I released it right before COVID.
Mhm.
And I think I contractually had to be like, "Do you want this?" And they were like, "No."
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That's my experience with most pitches.
Yeah, I know. I
Um,
mean, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about too, of the like, here's a great idea that's really fun. And then they're just like, well, if you look at the numbers and the amount of episodes, it's just fully overlooking quality. It's just quantity over quality. And so it's like, here's
yeah,
a really fun, interesting concept that's going to be really good. It is 4 episodes. And then most networks saying, well, if it's 4, then no, I'm not. It doesn't matter if it's good or not.
right. They're like, "Do you want to put it on this existing feed?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think I do."
Yeah.
um, so I got clearance from them in 2019 to just do that by myself.
Cool. And then did Sophie was your producer for Bechdel
On
Cast and
mhm.
that as well, or
The only show I've done that she hasn't produced is My Year in Mensa. That one I
gotcha.
did completely by
So
myself. That was a fun thing for me because it was like
sure.
I I made it totally by myself, and after like iHeart was like, we don't really want that, and then it did really well, and they were like, we changed our mind, could we buy it from you? Which
Oh
was cool.
wow.
That's like my peak, and then but from there on, I got to work with Sophie, and I have on every show, and
Great.
it's the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that has to be such a good feeling when iHeart comes back and they're like, actually, hey, we saw this did really well.
Yeah, that was like, I mean, I was just happy that people like listened to that show at all. I kind of felt like right place, right time to
Totally.
do a show like that. Yeah.
And so that comes out, I read like January 2020. I
Yeah.
loved it. I thought it was amazing. I wanted to ask
Thanks.
about your experience creating limited series. How much time? I imagine it's like it's different for each series that you do, but is there kind of a ballpark of how much time you spend in the pre-recording phase, like script writing and interviews and everything before you start actually recording, or how's that look for you?
It's like depended on the show.
Sure.
Mensa was like a very working backwards kind of thing where I like didn't know what to do with all of those columns I'd written. So I wrote this really long essay, and anyone I showed it to, they're like, "This is great, but like, what? Where do you put it? It's like it's not long enough to be one thing. It's too long to be other things."
Mhm.
So I've just broke it up into 4 segments and then reworked it to be a podcast.
Yeah.
Um, so that was different, but yeah, all the other shows that I've done at iHeart, I would say I do like a solid month plus, if they'll let me, of just research.
Cool.
And then I just try to stay like 2 weeks ahead on scripts, but generally it's like pretty back to back.
Yeah. Um, what is it? And then when you're recording it and editing it, is the turnaround time, you said like around 2 weeks. Are you working with Sophie and like an editor and stuff? So during the like
Mhm.
that production phase, you're done with the interviews and now you're recording. Is Are the episodes coming out live? Like, are they coming out and you're getting feedback as you're doing it? I'm trying to remember with Mensa, if like the first two had come out and then the
I
third
think, and then I
one.
like changed stuff. I like to not be too far ahead because I am like just pathologically scared of
Me too.
missing something, and like I want to almost give myself the space to give like the episode I have coming out tomorrow of 16th Minute includes I think like some really valid feedback I got about the previous episode, and I'm really behind, so I was able to include that.
Nice. On the
But
manosphere.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, especially a series like that where theoretically it would be great to have the time to be done that far in advance, but it's a weekly show, and
Yeah,
the benefit of it is that like I mean, especially with something that dense that I'm coming in pretty cold on, is it is really nice to have the chance to like hear what people have to say and find stuff that inevitably that like I missed and be able to work it into future stuff.
absolutely. I talk
Yeah.
to a lot of producers on here about banking episodes specifically, and we kind of go back and forth on it in that it is nice in theory, like the idea of not having the stress of like if something comes up, you're not scrambling to like, oh man, I have to, record something last minute. And
Yeah.
that stress, especially for something as light and fun as podcasting, having to like panic record stuff is just, it's never fun.
Yeah,
Um,
and also being stressed out about a podcast is objectively so embarrassing.
oh,
Like you're
totally.
just
Yeah.
like it's how I feel every day, but just admitting that is just like, oh my God, the stakes couldn't be lower.
No, truly. And it is truly a thing that is, I try to do a good job of reading the room of when hanging out with friends that are non-podcasters of like who's complaining about what, and then when they say like, "How are you doing?" Sometimes I'll just go, "I'm fine,
Couldn't be happier. No
I'm fine,
notes.
and
Can't
I'm not
complain.
stressed, and I'm very normal, and I'm not going to follow up that story at the hospital you just shared."
There that's good. You never be the first to speak is like
Yes,
always a good, yeah, yardstick.
that's great, but I do think it's what happens sometimes with banking is, and I've seen this happen where true, like people have banked, 6 months of episodes just to get it done. And I think this happens
Someone's done
sometimes
that.
with like celebrity pods or actors that are just
Oh,
used to being
sure.
able to like bulk is they're like, great, we can record 8 hours a day for 5 days and have the 40 episodes just fully done. And
Mhm.
then what happens is like they get a little bit of feedback when the episodes start coming out of, oh, I kind of wish you guys did this or that. And it's like, well, we already recorded 20 other
That are
episodes.
nothing like what you want.
No, not
Yeah.
at all. And now it's going to be like
Yeah.
an editing nightmare or like potentially like re-recording stuff. So I always try to, whenever possible, push back a little bit on banking. Like, a few, great. I think that's especially if it's evergreen or the show is like established. But I do
Yeah.
see it backfire sometimes where um, consistent feedback will come in and it's too late and there's nothing you can do, unfortunately.
Right.
Um, it makes it pretty tense. So you're doing Bechdel Cast and these limited series at the same time.
Yeah.
So something I was curious about as someone who has a lot of experience with both, just kind of like the pros and cons of both of those types of like release schedules to you? Like, are there things that you like and dislike about, either of them?
Yeah, I mean, I the thing I really like about the weekly, especially the Bechdel cast
Mm.
specifically, is that it just like it's there's it's easier for there to like be a community,
Yep.
and we can tour, and it feels like I don't know, like the good parts of parasocial are there.
Totally.
Where like with most of my limited series, I'm like I don't think I could tour that like, and some of them are so serious. It's like I can't make a T-shirt about that. That would be so gross. Although it does not stop some people, especially
Sure.
in the true crime space sometimes. I'm like, "Oh my god, you guys." Um, but, uh
You're
but
not
yeah,
getting a wedding invite from the Lolita podcast.
right. And that's as it should be.
Yes.
But
Yep.
I do like with the Bechdel cast that it's like, I mean, getting to I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's not as like I'm not obsessive about the edits of that show.
Sure.
It's like easier to build community, it's easier to go on tour, and it just like is I mean, not that I don't enjoy making the limited series, I definitely do, but like the Bechdel cast is just like really fun.
Yeah,
So it's nice to
absolutely.
have that side.
It's like a different language. And
Yeah.
what's nice about, and I experienced this too with Sean and Hayes in the Hollywood Handbook universe, is like some
Mm.
of the shows are just like easy and fun and not stressful. Frankly, I keep saying stressful, but like just it's just going in and we're having fun and then we're leaving. And then other, sometimes other shows, it feels a little bit more like homework, a little more just like the vibe and the tone is a little different, even though it's all fun comedy stuff. Sometimes it feels, a little bit more like homework and prep and more effort goes
Yeah.
into it. Other times just feels like just being silly and leaving. Um,
That's the best.
yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
if everyone actually likes each other. I feel like I hear such scary stories sometimes about like co-hosts that secretly hate each
Yeah,
other.
it's sad.
And it makes me feel very lucky where I was like, no, it's just like I genuinely love Caitlin so much. We have so much fun doing it. And if it wasn't fun, and it was still your job, that would feel awful, especially when your job is to like perform friendship. I don't know. It just seems very hard.
It's interesting watching that happen, and I think that's like a best case scenario is two friends just getting to spend quality time together and having fun and doing a cool podcast. And, you know, I love the Bechdel cast. Just being able to like listen and experience it vicariously with both of you is super fun. Um, and I will say though, what is interesting with the like, friends doing a podcast together, I've also seen this and I respect it. I've seen shows end like just permanent hard stop, the show's over. And
Yeah.
part of it is they will say like our dynamic has changed. We're now like we're
Ooh.
coworkers and
Yeah.
I don't want to be coworkers with you. We're
Right.
friends and this podcast isn't worth jeopardizing our friendship.
Losing the friendship. I
Yeah,
mean, I think it takes like a really big person to be able to
totally.
say that too. I think part of what Caitlin and I sort of got lucky with was that we were like, like casual friends when we started the podcast, but
Yep.
it was like through doing it that we became close. So it feels natural. But of course, yeah, if it's like a years long friendship and then all of a sudden there's this like element of commerce to it, or when like I'm always so curious. I don't know anyone who's actually done this, I don't think, but like when married couples do podcasts
Mhm.
or even or something I find very weird. And again, I can't think of an example, but I feel like it's a more sort of current thing for them to just take like for a network to take two entertaining people and have them pretend that they're friends.
Yep.
And that
It
is
sucks.
like you can really it bums me out for all parties because it's just like I can tell you're not friends. Like
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the trauma dumping on a podcast for clicks. I've watched the most like awkward, like quote unquote chemistry reads of like these two people both have massive social media followings and they remotely they kind of like each other.
Right.
Let's put
They
them in a
both like
room.
Googling things,
Yeah,
like just the vaguest shit. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And what I like about podcast fans though is they're very cool, for better and for worse. They can suss it out and go like, this is weird. And people, I don't know, see that. And so a network will definitely ignore any negative feedback from listeners. But I have noticed that happen on shows before where like just inauthentic, trying to be authentic. When it doesn't come naturally with a person or with two people specifically, and trying to force a sincerity is very fascinating. And it feels like you're watching two humans in a zoo, try to be people. And
especially that now that there's so many of them are taped, and when you see that dynamic and the chairs are a little too far apart, I'm like, you guys don't know each other at all. It's just, and it bumps me out. I think it's the same thing when you can tell that a podcaster is not reading their own writing. Not that it's bad to read someone else's script, but it's just some sort of if you're reading someone else's script about how much I like this thing, and it's clear that that is just not true.
No.
I've always loved when a woman gets chopped up into tiny little pieces, which is so many limited run series that don't involve an actual friendship, but is trying to, just recreate My Favorite Murder or whatever. But,
yeah. And telling a network, what do you want me to pretend that I'm interested in? And then them being told well, murder does really well. Life, a health and wellness does really well. These are the things that sales tells us does really well. And then essentially actor goes great, that's what I will pretend that I care about for, $1.8 million. And I'm just going to try as hard as I can to pretend I really care about this. And I don't know, sometimes people will fake it till they make it, but it is. You brought up video. Video is super fascinating to me. Obviously, we're live streaming right now. This could be on YouTube in a little bit.
Yeah, you've pivoted, Kev.
I pivoted, and there's parts of it that I like. And I think part of it is I pivoted because I knew I had to. And it is, I like having it as an option. I've recorded, I built the studio in June, July, and I just like having it as an option for people where if they want video, I can turn the cameras on. I recorded a 5-episode thing a month ago, and they were no video. And I was great, then the cameras are off. It's that easy.
Wow.
So I like that option, but something that you pointed out that is very, very fun to watch. And maybe I'm a little better at, I'm probably just as good as anyone else is with this. The editing in video is really fascinating. You can see where cuts are happening.
Yes.
Maybe when people are uncomfortable. Sometimes people will be on a wide, and I feel they're cutting to a solo shot to hide the fact that someone else is clearly uninterested or they're looking at their phone. Yes.
Right.
And commenters are pretty good at catching that stuff. But what is really fascinating to me is people think they're much more subtle and sneaky than they are. And it's just really fascinating with, YouTube content, just people putting time codes of here's the 6 times this host or this guest to me clearly didn't want to be there. And you could just, you can't see it with audio. So with audio, it's just maybe you're trying to pick it up on the tone of the way they're talking. But with video, it's just if you have a wide angle shot, you're getting an unfiltered, full experience. I'm rambling too much. I apologize.
I really feel for people too, especially I don't know. I've been very resistant to video podcasting, especially because it makes, I mean, with the Bechdel cast, we could do it, but it's with my other series, it wouldn't even be possible without a huge lift of editing. And now it's sort of positioned as this is the way this is the only way you have. So if it's like, if the only podcast that'll work, quote unquote, are the ones that can include video, it's like there's going to be so much good shit that doesn't happen. It just bums me out.
Me too. And to what you're saying of the limited series networks and just people being so hesitant of like, well, it's only 5 episodes. We can't sell 5 episodes, so we're not going to do it. A similar thing of if you can't do video, we're less likely to pick it up because we could sell more if it's on video. I really
Yeah.
hate that approach because you are ignoring so many. You're just refusing to look at like what's a good podcast, like what's good content, and like who's a
Yeah.
talented creator, and then just wanting to work with them. The amount of people that are putting up like fake walls and fences and hurdles and stuff to say like,
Right.
well, we could make 10 grand more if you were on video, but because you're not, we're not interested, is just like, it's such a bummer.
Right. And then if you already do like reported stuff, I haven't been asked this explicitly, but I've had to, like talk with the people who work on my show and be like, all right, like, how do we turn this into a TikTok? And usually we'll like take some interview footage or something like that.
Mhm.
But it just becomes, I'm like, okay, we were to post full episodes of this weekly show, then they would be asking us to make weekly documentaries. And it's
Yeah,
like,
truly.
we can't do that. Like
You're a
it's
full
hard
news
enough to get the
program.
MP3 out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so, I think like anything, it depends on the content. If it's a lighthearted chat show and the people like doing video, great, they
Mhm.
should do it. And, they probably have like a big video fan base, but stuff that is a lot more like edit intensive, like the limited series that you're talking about that,
Yeah.
you've made, it just, you're right. It doesn't make sense. It's just make the content that you want to make or like the story that you want to share. But I don't like, it's a bummer to see people having to add elements, even like social media clips and stuff of,
Yeah.
well, this feels weird to share this clip without the context of everything that led up to it, but I'm told I have to start doing this.
I know.
So here it is.
It reminds me of my dad. I mean, it's not quite this, but my dad was a journalist
Mhm.
and he had to like learn. I mean, he learned the internet, but I think it was especially in like when I was in high school, he had to learn Twitter and he was just like old
Yeah.
and had to learn all this shit
Yeah.
and hated it and resented it. And I was like, is that what I sound like? Do I sound like my dad trying to learn Twitter in 2007? Like, I don't know.
I had an interesting first year in LA where I taught at a uh, private school in Koreatown. They had like a summer
Oh,
school
wow.
program, and I was looking for work, and they posted that they were looking for grade school teachers on Yelp, and it was down the street from where I lived. And so I applied for it, and I
Can you
said,
advertise for jobs on Yelp?
you shouldn't advertise for teaching jobs on Yelp.
Yeah.
And so I emailed and was like, hey, I just graduated college. I'm looking for work. I have a communications degree. I don't have an education degree at all, but I know you're looking for people and I'm looking for work. They're like, come on down. I came on down and got the job, worked. I taught a 4th grade summer class for like 3 or 4 months.
On what?
They just gave me like, here's the English workbook, here's the math workbook, here's the reading comprehension. It's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 days a week.
Okay.
And I did that, and I had like a class of like 9. And
That's a lot.
it was wild. I can't believe I did pretty good, but I can't believe I was allowed to do that. I think it was more just like babysitting. And then we would go to
Sure.
like different like museums and stuff. So then right from that job, I got hired at a retirement center. And so I went from 9-year-olds to 99-year-olds, and I worked there for
Mhm.
a year. And I taught a podcasting class to these senior
To old
citizens.
people?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was really fun. And one of the highlights of my experience working there was one of the residents said, oh, my granddaughter actually has a podcast. She has like a music podcast. I don't know. I've never been able to listen to it because I don't really know what podcasts are. And so she
Right.
gave me her phone. I said, "What's it called?" And she said it. I typed it in. I hit subscribe and I hit play. And she just lit up and she's like, "That's her. That's my granddaughter. This is crazy." And she was talking
That's
about
so
like the
nice.
Strokes have a new album. Here's a little clip of it. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna listen every week. This is so cool." So
Wow, and that's how her Nana knows who the Strokes are.
I know. And I was wondering,
That's
I
really
got kind of
sweet.
freaked out. Like, what if she was like, "Welcome back to Guys We Fucked." And I was just like signing her up for the most vulgar thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, that's how
that
she got into the Strokes.
that really rocks. That's so cool. I mean, I really that's not not to be a total fucking dork, but like I really like podcasting for that reason still.
Me
Even
too.
if like I really I don't know, especially how like it makes like citizen reporting. I mean, there's the bad version of that too, but how it makes like citizen reporting easier and just all of
Sure.
this like
Yeah.
amazing stuff.
Mhm.
Um I love it.
And it's really fascinating watching the waves of people learning about it. Like my first few years, I was so then after the retirement, I don't know why I'm interviewing you. I should be asking you all these questions. I'm just telling you my career story. So boring.
No, I want to know. I want
But
to
I
know.
worked as a page at NBC,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and I quit to work at Earwolf. And my parents were like, "Why? What? First of all, what's a podcast? And why would you quit NBC to work for a fucking podcast?" And I was like,
You're like,
"Trust
it's
me,
new media,
yeah, it's
bitch.
less money."
We're
And yeah, and I was like, "This is the future," and have been doing it now ever since. But it was a similar thing where at that time, they had just no understanding of what it was, and then slowly they kind of understood it. But then I also think what happened, and I don't know, I don't like celebrity pods, but the one upside of it is then
yeah.
people like my cousins and aunts and uncles were now all of a sudden like, "Hey, my favorite football player has a podcast. That's what my
Mhm.
nephew does. I now understand what his job is," and stuff like that. So that was kind of the interesting side of it too.
Yeah.
Did your parents understand podcasting when you were getting into it, or were they just like,
No.
"Yeah, not at all"?
No.
Uh-huh.
No. Yeah, no, my mom, I think, figured out how to stream they came to live shows, like when we would do live shows in Boston, and they'd be like, "Great job," at whatever that was.
Yeah.
But my mom, I think, didn't figure out how to play podcasts on her phone until she knew Rachel Maddow had one.
Yep. Yeah.
And then she figured it out for Rachel, and then would toss mine on every now and again. But now she's like about it, you know. But it
That's
was,
really
I
cool.
mean, it had to have been at least 2 years before she even knew how to like
Yeah.
access it.
Fully get it.
It's really, yeah, it's weird. And then my dad was like a more tech savvy due to having to learn how to use
Sure, with
Twitter
his
in
job.
2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And then just kind of like the downside of it is like the people like Joe Rogan and stuff. Then you have people that you went to high school or college. "Oh yeah, I know podcasts. I love Joe Rogan." And it's like, no, that's
You're
not.
like, it's not like that.
I
Yeah,
know.
no, it's like it's our fault that Trump won again. It's
Yeah,
like, no, it's not.
it's
No.
ridiculous. So then
Yeah.
you have people like learning about podcasts, but not the way that you wanted them to, or it's like,
Yeah.
no, this don't say
Yeah.
that I'm also like this person. It's very different than that. Um,
Yeah, I've worked on one celebrity podcast, like, I don't even think I was credited on it, but it
sure.
was, like it was very enlightening, or it was like, "Oh, these are, like, 2 completely different things," and I get why both of them are individually appealing, but low key, this one was
what was the
worse.
vibe like? Was it tense or was it fun?
Mm,
Um, or you can
the
not answer too if you don't want to. I'll just say I've had varied different experiences with the celebrity pods. Sometimes it's like super easy, and the people are just like, "I think it's crazy I'm doing a podcast," and they're very fun and easygoing. And then sometimes um, the people are like very aware of the financial pressure of it, like doing well, and so
Right.
then sometimes it feels very tense and serious. And so I guess any podcast could say that of like some people are just like, "I'm just hanging out with my friend," and then others are just like, "This is really important stuff we're doing." So I don't know. I find the vibes of various shows like very fascinating.
It is interesting, yeah, I don't know, I feel lucky to have started before it was, like,
Mhm.
there was an expectation to make money, I
Sure.
guess.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I don't know. This show that I worked on, I mean, it was years ago now. It was like the host was a great conversationalist, but it was like, I think predicated on what a lot of celebrity podcasts are, which is that like they were an expert in something that they just objectively weren't. And so they
Yeah.
needed to have like other people, make the one sheet of facts so that they could have the sheet of facts in front, so you're just like,
Yeah.
well, like, what are we even doing? Like, I don't know.
What's really fascinating about that too, I've worked on shows with the one sheet of facts, and it sometimes I feel like it very, very much almost depends on the person, because if I don't really like the host, when they get the one sheet, I'm rolling my eyes of like, they shouldn't host this. Like, this is bullshit. They're just learning all of this like right before the guest gets here. But then other times when I think the person's like a very nice and good, whatever, a good person, when they get the one sheet, I'm like, it makes sense. They're pretty busy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're like, you know what? It actually, I'm glad. I wouldn't want them to look like they didn't know what they were talking
yeah,
about.
they should have stuff like this. No, that
They
actually
should get paid more than me. It makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And they definitely already have millions and millions of dollars, but they should get a lot of it. They should get a lot of the money.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, before getting into the podcast simulator game, were there episodes that you've done? I'm sure there are. Is there one where you were like, hell yeah, I absolutely crushed this, and you feel like it was like accurately like executed in the way that you were hoping it to be? And then also, was there one that was the opposite, where you were like, man, I wish we had a second shot at that episode, or like if I could redo it, I would have done X, Y, and Z differently?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, I think I just like across the board am bad at telling like which episode is going to do well versus which is going to do okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's very rare that I'm like, this is a banger, everyone's gonna love it, and then that will get like the lowest streams in a month or
I
whatever.
jinx myself when I think that. When I go in
Yeah.
confident is always when I like fall on my face.
Right, it's always the one that like I've done the most research on. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. People want to hear this interview. And then it turns out some people did, but not as, and then there's other ones that, for whatever reason, I had like much less time to do it. And it's
Mhm.
sort of just a little bit of context in an interview. And then of course, like that's the one. And so at this point, it's like, sure, fine. The thing I would change that I still get so much like shit about to this day,
Oh, wow.
where is in Lolita Podcast, I
Mm.
had voice actors who were, I mean, they were mostly my friends. Some were actually voice actors, others were just people I knew because I made it during COVID.
Yep.
Um, and I was making that show on such a tight timeline that it would be basically like 2 or 3 days before an episode would come out. I would just like text blast everyone who I thought might have 5 minutes
Yep.
and be like,
And a
hey,
mic.
could you be, yeah, exactly. Like, could you play like Vladimir Nabokov? I would give them no direction whatsoever.
Yep.
And whenever they sent in, I would air.
Yep.
And there were a couple of reads that listeners hated. And I like, that is all, it's not their fault. It was on me because I gave them no direction and like 12 minutes to execute it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I can't change it now, but it did teach me that like, even if I'm giving someone a short turnaround, I have to give them some kind of like, don't sound insane, or like do at least one straight read
Yeah.
and then have some
Then
fun
you can do a
so that
silly
we can
one.
use. Yeah.
It's very relatable. Sometimes trying to be, I'm speaking for myself, trying to be like nice and like, hey man, you can do whatever. It's chill. I'm chill. The vibes are good.
And then
I
sometimes
don't-
you're like, wait, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I realize I'm like actually setting the person up to fail, because they're like, well, you didn't give me anything, so I'm just gonna do whatever I think is best, and then posting
Yeah.
it and then seeing like, oh, that was not helpful.
That's got to be hard with Hollywood Handbook if someone doesn't know what they're walking into.
And it
That-
happens sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes
I
it's
mean,
amazing.
they're great eepisodes when
Yeah.
people don't know what they're walking into.
And sometimes I can like try, and I've definitely done this, where it's like a person where I'm like, I know they have never listened to the show before, and I will email the publicist and be like, here's 2 or 3 great episodes that I think are very easy, like dip your toe in. I highly recommend they listen to it, just one of them. They don't even have to finish it,
But
just like 15 minutes just to get the tone.
get the vibe,
And
yeah.
then they respond like, no problem. I sent it, sounds great. And I'm like, okay, I feel better. And they walk in and Sean and Hazel will be like, have you heard the show before? And they go, no, not at all. And it's like, all right, well, I tried my best. But there are times like that
Yeah.
though, where, I feel like as a producer, it's your job to just be like setting people up for success. And then
Yeah.
sometimes you kind of, you know, get too confident or lazy, frankly, and just go like, well, they're all great. It'll be good. And then you realize that it's happening like, had I'd said X, Y, or Z to this person, maybe it wouldn't feel as like tense, right? Not tense, but just like, everyone's kind of like trying to keep their head above water. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, especially when you're working on the tight timeline like that. Like
Yes.
it's just you can and I also totally get on the other end, like anytime that like you're asked to do a ton of prep to do like that also is a big ask. But it's like, yeah, get the tone of the show you're about to go on.
Sure.
We've had issues like that on the Bechdel cast before. Not issue. I mean, like I can count it on one hand
Sure.
in
Yeah.
8 years, so it's not that bad. But especially with I think like bigger guests that are very busy, they're like, yeah, I've listened. And then as the show starts, it's like, oh, they didn't listen.
Yeah.
And we have like one lost episode that no one will ever know about, where it
Sure.
was like one of our biggest gets ever.
Yep. Wow.
And they just really
They tanked.
hated their experience. They didn't know it was a show that involved criticism.
And were they just being like overly complimentary, or just like, were they just so clearly like shocked at the conversations that were happening, or?
Yeah, it was a guest who was like significantly older than us as well. So
Sure.
I think that like I don't know. The our definitions of feminism weren't jiving.
Weren't
And then
aligned.
at the end, I mean, thankfully their publicist reached out and was like, maybe not. And we're like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
maybe not.
I'm pro scrapping episodes. I understand the frustration of, you spent this time and effort preparing for an episode and then recording it. And especially like you said, when it's like a big name that, will draw people. But it is a thing though of I don't know. It's if it is negatively impacting the overall show. You very
Right.
generously did We're Here to Help, and you were amazing. We did some fun calls with Gareth, and we released all of your calls. We've done calls with me, Jake, and Gareth where we just go, let's not release that one. And so we
Yeah.
have like a handful of calls that were like, whether it was like us couldn't figure it out, or the caller was difficult, or just like it just wasn't working. Now granted, those are only like 15-minute calls. It's very easy to scrap, but
Right.
I don't feel like things should be released just because they were recorded.
Because totally.
And
Yeah.
also
That's
you
what
don't know
scares
if
me about streaming.
streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But inevitably. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, just that you don't know you don't know what is the episode that someone will go, I think I'm done.
Right.
And if your like floor is too low and you release a few that are like, hey, this was a bad episode, but it's Monday, we gotta release something on Monday.
Mhm.
I just don't want to give like fans of the show, or like the host specifically, I don't want to give fans an opportunity to go, I think I'm done. Like, I think I don't
Right.
want to listen to the show anymore. And so if we're, not that people can't keep, stop listening to a show, but if they stop listening to the show and I feel like we're still releasing really good episodes, then I'm like, well, yeah, there was just like, they don't like listen to the show anymore. That's totally fine. But if I feel like we're releasing stuff just for the sake of releasing it, and they
People can hear
unsubscribe.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can, and like we were saying earlier, with like the video and stuff, you can hear it and you can see when it's not working. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, two things that like I feel like I've been really focusing on in like 2024 and into next year are for better and for worse, because there's more and more competition, I think your first episode is now like more important than it ever used to be. And so like nailing
Yes.
the launch and like the promo of it and the marketing of it, and
Mhm.
just the quality of it, I spend like way more time on my first episode of a show than I ever did before.
Interesting.
And also with the losing stuff, I'm very, it's tricky when you have a guest on because you feel like you wasted their time by
Yeah.
scrapping something. And so I don't do it that often, but especially if there's something like without a guest, I'm very quick to be like, this wasn't working. Let's lose it. I
Yeah, especially
yeah,
it's like I always want like people to feel I mean, with some exception, there's some people that maybe deserve to feel bad about having come on the show. But in general,
yeah,
like I don't, especially because I mean, on 16th Minute, so many of the people I'm interviewing are just like regular people. I don't want anyone to like regret having done it,
absolutely.
like, and so so that's, I mean, that's the nice thing about like having the edit barrier and not having it air in real time, but also just, I don't know, like I understand that especially it's like if they don't go on podcasts a lot, it's like a risk.
They're super hesitant
Um,
for sure.
yeah, and it's like I want to, maintain that trust with them. If they're an asshole, that's a different situation, but that's like very much in the minority of
Yep.
experiences I've had on that show.
Well, and that's what I think you do such a great job with that show is you're taking moments in time that, sometimes like are things that were like a very funny clip, like something like the Wicked Witch
Oh,
of
yeah.
the East, bro.
Yeah.
That was hysterical. You're not setting up the people you're talking to like, "Oh, we're gonna talk about how stupid and silly this like your I think you do a great job with this with all of your shows. Your tone is very supportive and like welcoming to people that I think um a different host, if they're 2% a little more rigid, I don't think the guests are willing to open up, And so,
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
of
That's
course.
really yeah, I mean, I just like I don't want people to feel bad about having come on, but it's also like I mean, I'm sure you've had to navigate this a million times. The like careful like high wire act of I guess, like, letting guests tell the listeners, like, "This is who I am, this is what I'm about," without making it like, "And this is my judgment on it." It's
Yep.
like as if the interview goes the way that I'm hoping the interviews go,
Mhm.
then you'll have a better idea of who they are
Mhm.
by the end, and you don't need my personal judgment on them.
Have you had, and obviously you don't have to name names, but have you had that experience before where you see very clearly the guest trying to like spin a narrative that you're like,
Yes.
this is interesting, because
Yes.
I understand why you're doing this, but this is like they're PRing the interview with you.
Yeah, only, like on this show, like, I can only really think of, like, one
Sure.
example where
Yeah.
that has been, like, I which just resulted in, like, I delayed releasing it for months
Interesting
because I didn't know how to
approach
cut
it.
the episode in a way that felt honest
Mhm.
and not, like, overly defensive of the guest, but also without setting them up,
Yeah.
So it was just like, yeah, but the nice thing that I found was because I was like really worried about that going into like talking to characters of the day. I was like, what if these people are fucking awful? Most of them are lovely.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's always a few people who are trying to, like get a second wave of,
Yeah. Fame.
whatever, and they start just saying shit, and you're like, well, I can't like I'm not gonna let you do that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's super fascinating. When you book people for that, are you reaching out directly? Are you working? Does iHeart's book? Do they have like a booking team that's helping you with that? Because it's like I imagine a very challenging show to get a hold of the people that you're discussing.
Yeah, it's gotten easier over time, like,
Hmm.
now that I have a catalog of, like I swear I'm not trying to, like, get you, because so many of the people I've talked to
Sure.
had like what sort of have like a little bit of media PTSD, with people only wanting to ask them about the same 14 seconds of their life and
Mhm.
kind of embarrass them, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So once I had some like proof that I wasn't doing that, it got easier. But I always do the first reach out, and then if they're not responsive to me, I'll usually have
Yeah.
one of my producers try, and then if they don't respond to that, then we're like, oh well, we tried.
Sure. That makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. Very cool. Jamie, I love chatting with you. Before I get into Podcast Simulator, I'm going to
Yeah.
do a little bit of a brief tonal shift, a little heavy. I apologize. But I
Ooh.
wanted to share something with you that I think you might find interesting,
Ooh,
but
okay.
please bear with me, which is we have an interesting thing in common. That is your dad and my grandma passed away a few days apart from each other. And
Oh wow.
you released an episode on 16th Minute called Grief Part Whatever a
Yeah.
few weeks later.
Mhm.
When I saw you post it, I had so many mixed emotions. I said, well, this is going to be amazing, but I'm not ready to listen to it.
Maybe not the time. Yeah.
Yep. So I
Totally.
skipped it and I listened to it yesterday for the first time as I was preparing for this discussion with you. And no surprise, it was incredible. You're a fantastic writer and it's very touching. And the thing that really I really connected with is you talk about your obs- obsession with writing and documenting as many things as you can.
Mhm.
And basically how fascinated you are with keeping the details and how much you wrote over the last year and how much your dad has written over the years. I thought it was really interesting. And so I wanted to share with you a letter that I got from my grandma, a posthumous letter that is
Wow.
so bizarre. It's
I can't wait.
it's dated August 23rd, 2000. And it also says 85 degrees Wednesday.
Okay, she's a details person.
She is.
Yeah.
Dear Kevin, today is your 8th birthday. You will be 21 years old when you read this, probably in college. You're really into Nintendo and Pokemon, playing football for St. Raphael's, and you're only in 2nd grade. You're a great boy and a wonderful grandson. I hope you stay this way and you'll be a fine young man and be good to your mom, dad, and sisters. Remember, quote unquote, I love you. Grandma, quote unquote, Foof, which was our nickname for her.
Wow. Incredible nickname.
Thank you. Her name's Mary Lou. I could not pronounce Lulu. And so I kept saying Foo. And so for my entire life, I called her Foof. Needless to say, I did not receive this letter on my 21st birthday. I received it 3 months ago.
Wow.
What was very funny to me about it is, and I think my mom confirmed this for me, which is in the year 2000, she said, I'm going to write a letter for all 13 of my grandchildren for them to receive on their 21st birthday. Very funny.
The millennium was hitting her hard.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And very funny for it to be our 21st birthday. She is not a drinker. And so the connection to 21 was just like, it was interesting to me. What ended up happening, as you can tell, is she wrote these 13 letters and put them in a shoebox and forgot about it. She never thought about it again until what I'm guessing is maybe like a few months before she passed. She was like, oh, the letters, or maybe my mom found them. And I think there was a discussion of like, maybe after she passes, everyone will receive their like letter basically. And so you talked about details a lot in that episode, and kind of and correct me if I'm wrong, a almost like frustration with a 3-sentence synopsis for your dad's entire life. And how he was so, like everyone is so much more than just like a character limit, basically. And so, and I felt the same way when I received this letter of like, oh, this is more of who she was, of like a sweet and unintentionally very, very funny person.
Yeah.
Much more so than like it just saying like grandma, mother, great grandmother, and like that's it basically.
Right.
So this long-winded story is basically to ask you, are there things, and it doesn't have to be in your personal life,
Mhm.
maybe anything you've worked on. Have there been things where the details have been more important than the like essentially like the log line, where like something maybe like stood out to you that was more fascinating than like the episode or the show as a whole, that like maybe has stuck with you to this day?
That's a really good question. First of all, I'm so sorry you lost your grandma. She said that, and that letter is so funny. I'm like, what did she think she was doing with the quotations? I have
She
so
does
many
that with all of her
questions.
letters, and it's so funny because it always comes off, again, unintentionally
Yeah.
insincere. So she'll say something and then put it in quotes, and then it reads as if she doesn't actually mean this. So, like, remember,
Right.
I love you.
Theoretically, I love you,
Yes.
but
And so there's a lot
it's
of letters that my sisters and I have received where the nicest part of the letter is in quotes.
that's unhinged. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
looking for I mean I've struggled with that still
Yes.
where I've been talking about like losing my dad on stage, but I
Mhm.
haven't talked about him in detail. Like I've tried to delineate it between like talking about grief versus talking about my dad in
Sure. Yeah.
very broad terms because I don't know. Yeah, it feels sacred. I was going to say I wonder I will answer your question as I'm looking for. I found it's my brother's, but my brother as I was like helping clean out my dad's house, I found this envelope that said like open in 2026 Ben Loftus. And
Wow.
I was like, Ben, we should just open it now. We got to open it now.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it was one of the funniest things I've ever read. There was all of this word art. It
Yeah,
was nuts.
that's really funny.
Um,
Also, just to jump in, oh, you do not have to answer about something with your personal life or your dad at all.
oh no, I don't mind I just meant like in the context of stand up. I feel
Sure.
like it's just like
Um,
a weird thing. Yeah.
I totally get that. Speaking of stand up, I was laughing really hard at something you said last night on stage that I really bonded with, especially with my dad, which is
Mhm.
you tell a story of seeing James and the Giant Peach with your
Yeah.
parents, and you walk out of the theater, and your mom says, that would never happen.
Yeah.
Um, that's incredible. I was crying when you said that. My similar experience to that is my dad has only seen like 5 movies in theaters in his life.
Uh-huh.
And the last one, he's still alive. The last one is Nacho Libre. And
Oh my God.
he leaned over to me during the credits and said, that's it, I'm done. And to this day, that is the last movie he saw in theaters was unwillingly seeing Nacho Libre with me. And so I like to think he went out on a high, but
That is such a broader, I'm done than you would expect. He's like, "I'm done with the cinematic
yes,
experience.
he
I'm
saw
done."
Miracle because he also loved hockey. And so he was very
Oh,
excited to
okay.
see that with me. But I can
Yeah.
count them all on one hand. Star Wars, Jaws, Harry Potter, the second Harry Potter with me, Miracle because he wanted to see it, and then Nacho Libre. And then after Nacho Libre, he declared he's done going to the movies and still hasn't.
I appreciate his conviction.
Yes.
That rock. I mean, as far as my work goes, I think that the one that I am the happiest that I was able to, like, capture is the Kathy Guys White podcast I worked on. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that was really I still feel like that one's really special to me because it just, like I'm so grateful that she trusted me, and that was like, she trusted me to, I hope, like, have the world know her a little better,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that was, like, a really special one for me. She was so generous with her time. I have the letter that my brother wrote to himself when he was
Wow. Great.
12.
Okay.
I'm
Great.
gonna just air it out here.
Cool.
So I'll try to show you. The first 2 lines are in word art. This is "Dear me, picky picky." We don't know what picky picky said. but he was 12, so he's just being random.
Picky. That rules.
Dear me, picky. Anyway, you or me will be opening this in 25 years. Life back in 2009 ain't that great. Mom and dad are in the process of divorce, and it stinks, but I am fine. Wow, it really does stink. Anyway, if you are not 36 by now, close this document. Sorry about that. Technology in 2009 is pretty advanced. With iPods, computers, and PlayStations. Oh yeah, with cellular phones and whatnot.
Yeah.
IDK, my BFF Jill. Recently, Barack Obama was sworn in as the 41st president of the United States. How did he end up doing? I liked that Obama ran his campaign. He really spoke to the young people in the election. Overall, I think things will be better in 2034. See you then. Ben Loftus. P.S. Right now, I am writing in the computer lab.
Wow.
Sorry, it's 2034. We opened it 10 years early. I'm glad, though.
I'm glad you did, too.
I just, the rawness of, I am fine. Wow, it really stinks.
Yeah.
Just makes me laugh so much.
I started I should have been, in hindsight, much more careful with my journals, like where I was placing them.
Oh, yeah.
And I had one in the first page. The first line was like, well, this ain't going to be easy. And my friend came over, opened it, and then went, I don't think I'm supposed to read this, and then closed it. And I went, you're correct. And I was like, okay, this is...
Good friend.
Yeah.
I love reading. I've journaled so much when I was a kid, and it's just so obvious, whoever my favorite author was at that time,
Sure.
because I'm half of them I'm just trying to write a Lemony Snicket book, and I'll just randomly define a word in the middle of a journal entry.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you still journal?
Not as much as I should. I feel like I like bullet point things out.
Yeah.
When I'm mad. I
know.
journal enough.
I feel like I do the same. I don't like associating journaling with whenever I'm very sad or angry, but it is so much harder when things are going good to go, hey, this is fun, or things are just fine. I should be writing this down sometimes, but I don't know. I'm better with I write a lot of to-do lists and just random things down that if you look at it, it probably looks like a journal that you could connect the dots with. But
I'm similar with the list. I hope that the lists will sort of come together to look like a life on some timeline, because I'm not good about journaling anymore.
A to-do list, a lifetime would be my memoir. And it's just hundreds of to-do, 3 bullet point to-do list. Okay. Jamie, that was so much fun. Thank you for sharing that. And
well, it wasn't mine. It was my brother's.
I know.
I wasn't vulnerable at all.
I'm glad that the saddest thing is I hope things are doing better now. And it's 2009 sounded pretty fun.
You're like, how did Obama do? Well, it's kind of a complicated question to ask.
Okay. Good. Overall, good. There's
if
a few
we're comparing to presidents on either side.
Yeah, exactly.
He did all right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you for Podcast Simulator. You are my probably 8th or 9th guest, but you are my second host that I've had on. And I'm very excited to do this, what I've been calling host mode, which is, I'm trying to move my mouse. There we go. Let's see how this looks. Okay. Welcome to Podcast Simulator. I'm going to try to do it off the top of my head. Let's see if I can. My little line I've been saying for it, something along the lines of, Jamie, as you know, podcasting can be fun, but also tricky. The things
so true.
that I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to do it justice. And so I want to,
there's a speech that goes at the beginning?
A 2-line speech. Jamie, as you know, sometimes things out of our control can sabotage us. That's just the nature of the job. But how we react can dictate our future. And with that, let us begin. Much better than what I was attempting.
That was great.
Thank you very much.
Let us begin is powerful. It's so scary.
It is powerful. Okay, we are doing host mode. Today you'll be hosting the investigative limited series podcast. Could you use it in a sentence? Let's
Okay.
see a little bit about the show. I'm going to try to read it as fast as I can. In this 8-episode series, you follow Mindspring, which is a fictional touring. For the sake of this, because I did Google Mindspring and it looks like a thing, this is not the same Mindspring. You follow
Okay.
Mindspring, which is a touring adult spelling competition. Mindspring consists of 6 competitors ranging from ages 30 to 65 who get on a bus and travel to cities around the United States to compete. Although the group advocates for learning at all ages, there's definitely something weird about this organization. The competitors get in arguments with each other online and off. The company deletes any posts that reflect anything negative about them / any questions about finances. And there seems to be a lot of behind the scenes drama. Think WWE meets Righteous Gemstones meets The Spelling Bee. You are creating this show independently, but there are networks interested in buying it from you. What do you think about this show just from this description, Jamie?
This sounds like a This American Life limited series.
Yes.
But one I would listen to. I
Yes.
like it. It sounds like a Christopher Guest movie. But it's the kind of show that I would listen to and really hope that whoever was hosting it would be willing to kind of make fun of the people involved. Because if they're just presented in a very
flat
NPR way, not as fun.
Yeah,
Not as fun.
I agree.
This reminds me of the kinds of shows that a guy I dated forever ago would make, where it would be really intimate portraits of other people, and then he would offer literally no information about himself at all. I'm like, wow, you're really meeting them halfway, man.
That's quite a move, just getting so much information and then just going, that was cool. Well, I'm going to head out. It's like, really?
And that's going to be actually money for me, paradoxically,
Oh,
not
gosh.
you.
That's wild. Well, you are the host of the show, so your decisions will dictate how it goes. Let's talk about your role. Like I said, you're the host. I just put a few basic things here. You're going to follow Mindspring on tour and document their competitions, interview the competitors and other members of the organization and fans of Mindspring, write and record scripts for each episode, and you're going to work with your producer and editor on creating a compelling 8-episode series. So it sounds like you kind of already have a bit of a game plan, is trying to find maybe those details that aren't just a over the plate, well, here's the story of Mindspring. Anything else that sticks out to you, or just trying to find maybe the unusual?
What would I do in this situation?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a bad question because you don't know anything about the show.
Ooh, I know a little bit about this show. I mean, I like the idea. It sounds fun. I feel like I do feel like in stories like this, I don't know. It's kind of a you don't want the host to be overly present, but I do feel like especially when you're making a show about something that's very specific and not easy, you should have to try to do it yourself so that you don't make fun of something that you actually could not do in a million years.
Let's see if that comes up later in the scenario.
Oh,
Pilot's license. On June 4th, you drive to Mills Park in Carson City to attend the Nevada State Fair. This is where the first competition begins, and you arrived a day early to hopefully get in a few interviews with members of Mindspring. One member, Daryl, is very excited that you are there. Get ready for a roller coaster through hell, Jamie. That's HE double motherfucking hockey sticks. Not very impressive, but sure, sounds like good content, and Daryl says he'll share everything. Cool. As the competition begins, you get an up-close spot on the side of the stage. The person sitting next to you is making an annoying tapping sound. However, as Daryl adjusts his seat, only you can see something strapped around his leg that's tapping on him. Are you doing Morse code to Daryl? The man kind of awkwardly laughs and gets up and walks away. Daryl wins the competition. In this scenario, what do you do, Jamie? Do you confront Daryl on the potential cheating, or do you sit it out and maybe not confront him?
I definitely do not confront him at this time. And then the way that I write the script is so it was a little weird, but I'm new to this world. So maybe this is common practice. I had to watch more.
I love that. And I will say you picked the right answer because if you did confront him, you would have lost the game.
Yes.
You just want to ask, but it's not worth risking your only solid source just yet. You pocket this information and bring it up at a later time. You got a B, which I think is fair because you didn't jump into the drama, but you got an A from the network because the show is not canceled and you, big picture, did the right thing. So good job. We're going to go to the next scenario. Uh-oh, this font is in white. I don't know why. This is a incredible vision test for Kevin.
Keeping things fresh, yes.
Instead of confronting Daryl, you get to, I'm going to have to zoom in. The monitor is too far away from me. You get to know a few of the other competitors. One of them, Patrick, says he doesn't trust the media and ignores you. Maria thinks the show about the competition is a great idea. She suggests that you travel with them on the tour bus and she'll tell you everything. It'll also save you a ton of money on travel. So Jamie, in this scenario, would you agree to this? Would you go on the tour bus with Mindspring for their tour? Or do you politely pass and travel by yourself?
I would go on the tour bus, definitely.
Very interesting. Let's see what happens. The tour bus seems like a great opportunity to spend a lot of time with Mindspring and get a lot of great info from everyone. And boy, do they deliver. So many details about how corrupt the organization is, crazy parties, who's hooked up with who, and much more. However, when you get off the bus, you're approached by Mindspring's lawyer and publicist. Because you're on...
They have a lawyer?
Oh, yeah. When you're on company property, they threaten to sue you if you don't send them the episodes before releasing. This takes all the fun and interesting parts out of the show. So even though short-term it seemed like a good idea, because you were on essentially company property, they try to spin it as that you cannot use anything that was discussed on the bus. Unfortunately, we're going to have to go back to that scenario.
Okay, I guess I'm going to travel solo. This sucks.
Yeah, that's tough. Although it seems like a great opportunity to get a ton of great interviews, you're doing it on a company vehicle. It's not a good idea. You respectfully pass on this offer and say you hope to get to know them throughout the tour in other ways. You remind them that you're not part of Mindspring and you're doing the show by yourself. Let's go to the next scenario. After a few competitions, you get to know Tony, a solid member of the crew who seems to be enjoying the tour less and less. One day, while interviewing him over hot dogs, he rolls his eyes about the spontaneity and excitement of the spelling bees. Tony says, I shouldn't say this. There's an awkward pause. You respond, it's up to you. Tony reveals, you know this is all scripted, right? You're kind of confused. He clarifies, we're actors. My name is not Tony. It's Anthony. You talk for a little bit more about this huge discovery. As the meal finishes up, Anthony says to you, that was off the record, by the way. In this scenario, Jamie, are you releasing it? Or are you respecting this basically delayed wish that Anthony had?
I'm going to respect his wish.
Respect his delayed wish. You agree to not publish this information.
I got canceled again.
What a trip. Unfortunately, this kind of comes back to the problem, the fear that you had, which is there's not a lot of great parts of Mindspring's story without this. And so
without this, I can't go back to it later. Okay.
Let's go to release it.
We're just releasing it right now.
You confront a few other members who say it's true. You expose the truth, and the public calls this the jinx of our generation. I really like that title because the jinx is like it's not that old. Anthony is fired from Mindspring. You get an A from the host and from the network. Okay, this next scenario, if I read the text, it actually would spoil some things. So I'm going to do it off the dome. However, we saw previously how well that worked for me, but I am excited for this final scenario. And it actually goes back to something that you said of if you can't do it yourself, you don't really have the right to make fun of the people. And so it gets revealed. The thing that they are all competing for is a Zamboni, a fully paid off Zamboni that is all for the winner. And there's an opportunity for you. They just fully say, hey, if you want, you can compete in this, and you have an opportunity to win the Zamboni. So, Jamie, do you decide to compete in the competition and potentially win the Zamboni fully paid for, or do you respectfully pass?
I would do it.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because you actually perfectly segued into the spelling bee.
No.
The final scenario, Jamie, is you have to spell a word.
Okay.
The word is kaleidoscope.
Oh, no. Could you use it in a sentence?
I really liked how my brother Ben talked about his kaleidoscope and how much he used it in 2009.
I'm gonna get it wrong. Okay. Kaleidoscope. K A. Wait, can I write it down and then read what I wrote down? No, you can't do that there. Okay.
I'll say this. No, but if you get it wrong, I'll let you write it.
Okay. Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope.
Jamie Loftus, congratulations. You are now the owner of a new Zamboni.
Wow, that was thrilling.
And you won Podcast Simulator. There was a few trip ups throughout, but you won the most impressive part, which is you're now the winner of the MindSpring Adult Spelling Bee competition and the owner of a brand new Bruins Zamboni.
Oh, and it's branded for my area.
It's all for you.
That is so awesome. I gotta hit the rink. That's so exciting.
You gotta hit the rink.
I would love to. So I was just talking. I didn't realize how close the Zamboni factory is to where I live. It's like an hour away.
In LA?
It's in Camarillo. Yeah, it's
wow.
like super close.
The Zamboni factory. Have you been before, or did you just look it up and were like, wow, this is way closer than I thought?
No, when I first moved here, I tried to get them to give me a tour, and they were like, we don't do tours. Oh. And that was when it occurred to me that the Zamboni family, when you strip it of the, like ice resurfacer meaning, it is just like a kind of mean Italian family, and they don't want to give tours.
Damn.
I know. Someday. They're so close by. Oh my God. I can't believe I almost spelled I almost put a rogue A where an O belonged. It was almost a disaster.
That was thrilling. Let's see if the chat is clarifying. Nope, everyone's saying let's go. And a lot of love for you. No surprise. That's the show. Thank you so much for doing this, Jamie. I apologize it went so long. I started late and I went super long, and you're a very busy person. So thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything you would like to plug for all the people that are checking this out?
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I don't know how you write a new one every week. This was like,
it's wild. It's honestly why I'm late every week. So thank you for doing this.
It's incredible. Yeah, I guess what I'm working on right now is a show called 16th Minute. It's about the internet's characters of the day. Right now, we're finishing the year with a 3-part series on the Manosphere, and then we're going to close out the year with a Hawk Tuah retrospective.
Amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah. I just have a bunch of tech reporters try to explain her crypto scam to me.
I watched a great video from this guy, CoffeeZilla. It was very fun to watch him get involved in it, or just explain it. But then he was on the call and stuff. And I need to end more meetings by saying, all right, everyone, I'm going to bed, and just leaving a meeting. So
perfect sign off.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, everyone check out 16th Minute. It's incredible. I'm very excited for your special that's hopefully going to come out next year.
Thanks. Yeah.
And everyone should go get Raw Dog as well. It's amazing. That's it, Jamie. Thank you so much. For everyone that is
Okay.
watching live, I'm going to be off next week, and I'll be back Monday, December 30th, with another very special guest. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.